Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corkin here. I am one of the hosts of this show. And, every week we get to talk to interesting entrepreneurs and founders and executives, business people from all kinds of different companies. We've had a lot of interesting guests on this show, and today is no exception. Of course, this episode is brought to you by EO San Francisco, which is part of Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a global peer-to-peer network of more than 18,000 influential business owners in about 200 chapters worldwide. And if you are the founder, co-founder, owner, or controlling shareholder of a company that generates over $1 million a year in revenue and want to connect with other like-minded, successful entrepreneurs, and EO is for you. And the EO San Francisco chapter actually is one of the leading chapters in the world, helping people to learn, grow, and achieve greater success. The OSF chapter was founded in 1991, has over 120 members now in industry ranging from marketing to agriculture, tech, and professional services. You can go to eonetwork.org/San Francisco to learn more about what we do. And of course, this episode also brought to you by my company, Rise25, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcasts. And you can learn about us at rise25.com. All right, my guest here today is John Silva. He is the founder of a number of different companies, including Always Fishing Hospitality Group, Field Guide Consulting, and Culinary Catering. He is a proud graduate of UC Santa Barbara, which I was as well, so I was excited to hear about that, and a new member of EO San Francisco, so we're excited to have him here. And I always like to start, John, with hearing about little side hustles that you had as a kid. And you said you grew up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and getting home from bus stops was a bit of a challenge, kind of a multi-mile process. But you were smart, and so you created little side hustles along the way, and you made some money on the way home, which is pretty smart. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of fun being around entrepreneurs and also introduced by entrepreneurs. We're always looking for those little pockets in between things. Really early on, and like John said, I grew up in the mountains and get off the bus and have this, multi-mile hike up and down through and let your mind wander and go through people's backyards. And, finally was approached by some of these kind of like up the hill neighbors, said, hey, on your way home, would you mind feeding our cats or watering the plants or bringing the mail in, or we're going on a trip? And it was just something that just developed. And I think because it developed so early on, it was sort of eye-opening to see that people were looking for something from somebody around. It didn't necessarily matter who it was. And yeah, it was one of my first little things, just having money come in, just walking home from school. And took some of the heat off those Santa Cruz Mountain hills.
Yeah, for sure. And you'd actually learned some of this from, you had a grandfather who was in the Air Force, kind of like me, same situation. You had learned from him about the power of not trading hours for dollars. Tell me how you learned that.
Yeah, both of my parents are entrepreneurs. So having that is fantastic, but it's hard to learn, I think, from your parents, at least a certain part of your life. So I'd spend my summers in Oklahoma with my grandparents, spend a couple of months at a time. And my grandfather was just this incredible cornerstone for me. So huge piece of property, Oklahoma heat, not quite as palatable as the California heat. And so he'd give us chores to do. And it was things like mowing these massive lawns and raking out, pond scum. And it was stuff, and he always said, hey, I've got all these things that you can do, and I'll pay you, 10 cents an hour or whatever the range was. I'd look at it and go, all right.
It was probably a little bit more than 10 cents an hour. That sounds like a Depression era.
Yeah, you're talking about working with some old school Okies. Like
maybe it was 10 cents an hour.
Yeah.
And you'll like it.
And you'll do it. So I'd look at that lawn and go, oh man, that's going to take me, a few hours to do that. And, at that rate, that makes no sense. So just really, early on, I'd go, all right, well, instead of me doing this, for a long time and potentially making a lot of money, what if I just do it? What would you be willing to pay me just for the project alone? And he got a kick of that kind of stuff. And I think that's what he was trying to teach me at that point. So while I was checking off boxes really quickly and efficiently doing the work, and my brother was working for, time and money based off that, I was able to generate money a bit quicker.
And something similar happened for you around high school age. So you started, I think you were an artsy kid. You started creating pottery from your ceramic classes in high school and then turning around and selling it.
Yeah, I was lucky. I went to a college prep. Um, so you could build your own schedule to some extent once you were getting rid of all your needed work. So I had about a year and a half where I just spent time in art studios on campus doing pottery, and a bunch of people started approaching me saying, they enjoyed what I was producing, and I started selling sets of bowls, and that kind of grew out into one of my first businesses outside of college. But it was that first hook in where I could realize that I was making something and I was driving my own system of making stuff and selling stuff, and very, very appealing.
Yeah, and then in college you got into providing services for other students. So tell us about how you got into that.
Yeah, I think you put yourself out there, and if the pattern stays in place, so art student, psychology, kind of a recovering oceanographer, I think, from some point. And so while I was good at crafting and building, a lot of my peers were not. So in the same vein, they'd come to me and they'd say, "Hey, we need assistance here. Can you do this?" And I just found that it was this other way that I could not only extend my network, which was kind of the benefit as a secondary, but on the first part, projects and money, you need it done. I could get it done for you.
Yeah. And how did that evolve into the world of catering?
Yeah, very, very sort of non-linear. Uh, my mom jokes around that when I got in trouble when I was young, she'd take away shows from me. You know, Frugal Gourmet, Galloping Gourmet, Julia Child, Yen Can Cook, all these things that I love to watch and watch people make something. I think that was really what I gravitated towards. You get in enough trouble, and all those shows would disappear. So in high school, when I wasn't doing my own stuff and sports, I found my way into kitchens. And then that really went all the way through college. So I've done all kinds of crazy stuff in the culinary world. I've been, a butcher. I've been a cook out at sea, out of Santa Barbara. I've worked in different catering companies, an educational chef teaching food and food systems. I helped got a grant funded through Kaiser, which we were extending food and food resources like EBT and WIC and food stamps to underserved communities. But I kind of always thought I was going to be an artist. I thought I was going to get a job and was going to be like a ceramic instructor for the College of Marin or something like that. And food it always drugged me back to the kitchen, or drove me back to putting a plate in front of somebody.
What are the similarities between those art and food preparation and cooking?
Yeah, I love that question. It's it's all the good stuff. It's the creation, which I think artists are always looking to take a medium and present it in a different way. But then it has this incredibly just unique way of being very intimate, where the people are then consuming this food.
Yeah.
We're looking at a course of events over the course of the year. If we do 380 events and you multiply by that people that are at the events that we're catering, it's a lot. It's a lot of kind of like incredible moments that you're creating. And I think it's like anybody that's in art that's putting a photo in somebody, the goal is that, they're going to see it and be inspired by it or have some reaction to it. And so that's transitioned to me into the events that we produce and the food that we make. We're just sort of creating moments.
Yeah. When I think about this industry, and admittedly, I haven't worked in a kitchen since college. I actually worked in the dining commons at UCSB. But, I think about there's so many different variables and so much complexity, especially to a catering business. You have, obviously, you got to get clients that they're not recurring. Maybe some are recurring, but a lot of the clients are probably one-time types of special events. You got to hire staff. They're dealing with open flames and knives and things like that. You've got perishable food. You got so many different variables. As you look back on it, why do you think that you were able to thrive? You were able to have a business that was successful?
This is something that is oddly a very fresh thought. Talking to some other businesses that were kind of in the same world, and everybody sits really tight into this idea of, what are your costs of goods, and how do you create margins on your food? And I never started with that thought in mind.
Hmm.
I was never really concerned about, if I buy this organic produce, it's going to cost me more than this. I wanted it to be about the experience. So I wasn't going off margins. I was going off of, what are people looking for? And if they're looking for something that stimulates an experience that they can walk away from and remember, like, that's what I want to do. And so, that started with small dinner parties, and then went into, in 2019, the real large corporate, 5,000 person events we were doing. The clients weren't just asking for good food, and they were asking for an experience that connected people together. And I think that's really the only reason that I've gotten to where I am and I'm good at what I do, because I'm not a classically trained chef. I think 90% of my friends think that I go to work and I stand in a kitchen all day and, like, make small canapes, but I haven't actually been in my kitchen working as a cook for 8 years at least. But every day when I go in and I talk to my team, I go like, is what we're doing going to shift somebody in a positive fashion?
Mm-hmm. Does that have there ever been times where that approach has got you in trouble? Like, has there ever been a time where maybe you're looking back and you're like, oh crap, like we spend a ton of money on perishable organic food, and we should have we end up losing money on a gig. Maybe this is early on that you experienced things like this at all, if at all.
I think I've chased some events where I was probably trying to tick my own creative box too much.
Mm.
In terms of a business, those are bad decisions. But in terms of like this
Rather
creative,
than having a certain type of event that you know how to do well, your team knows how to do well.
yeah, we catered a movie shoot on Angel Island.
Oh, jeez.
Had to order a barge and put an art there, and
oh man,
do all this planning. In my head, I'm going, man, this is so cool. We're going to do this military movie. It's all night shots, and we're doing this and that. And I was going towards the unique of it.
Yeah.
Totally diving deep enough into it, and come to find out that you get locked on an island with a bunch of large athlete gentlemen that just want to eat all day, and you can't get back onto land. And like really quickly, you try to figure out how to get back on land to get more food. So
yeah,
lost money there, but have hilarious stories of trying to survive. Just in the Bay of San Francisco. So
wow, that's probably one of the toughest locations within an urban environment that you can think of. And you mentioned, so in 2019 you're doing 5,000 person events, and then of course early 2020 COVID hits. First, just take me back to March of 2020. What's going through your head as you start to see this thing unfold?
Yeah, March of 2020, I was I was at my sister's wedding in Maui, and I started getting phone calls about clients canceling their events. And I remember saying something like, "Oh, it's probably like the swine flu version 2." It was not. That was not that. But I was also dealing with a bunch of just random, business owner stuff. I was like, had a disgruntled employee that moved out of state that filed unemployment against me, and she was saying like I wasn't providing work for her, and I don't know how to do that when she lived in Florida. There's like so many different things going on. So I finally, I fly back after this wedding. I go into the office. I sort of check in with everybody that's been hit by all their clients. And, within that first 8 days, and this is going into that March 12th, 14th, we sent back like $5.2 million in deposits.
Wow.
And then just kept watching it go from there. So, I mean, it was an interesting year. I didn't actually know for sure I was going to come back to catering. I built a couple businesses in that first year underneath the umbrella of my business, and actually ended up either selling those off or giving them to staff so that they had something.
And what were those? Because I saw other catering companies that did something similar. They created different,
it
business.
was similar. I don't think anybody was doing anything hyper unique during that time. We went into a fulfillment system where we were shipping goods kind of all over the country. So packages of engagement kits and
Yeah.
snacks and mobile cocktail programs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Through some partnerships and doing our own, we started a meal subscription program, which actually did really well. But client acquisition, especially when you don't have like big dollar funding,
Right.
was hard to get around. And then turned my kitchen into a commissary in San Francisco that was making money. Got linked in with all my corporate clients and was doing, cooking classes online for 200 people at a time and cooking stuff them. So it was all stuff that worked. Financially, even during that time, it was all working. It just didn't work the way I wanted it to work. It wasn't fun. And it didn't like feel good.
They've heard this from others who own similar types of event-based businesses that they looked around and they realized, especially with their team was drawn to the excitement of doing an event, the energy that you get from that. And then they were locked behind their computer for 9 hours a day. And just, it wasn't something that they wanted to do where they wanted to be with their lives.
Yeah. EO, now that I'm in it, and it's like, we can just say this is an unprompted plug for EO. The best stuff during that time was the development stuff between business owners, right? Like we weren't producing events, but we were rebuilding the future of like green business practices together. We were talking about creating safe environments for employees when they came back. We were talking about how to push the needle and kind of like globalize offer sets and all that development stuff. Like that was fun, but that didn't have anything to do with like catering in air quotes.
Yeah.
And all the businesses that were working also weren't really focused on any of that stuff.
Yeah. So now you have, as things have come back, you have a couple of different businesses all under this umbrella of Always Fishing Hospitality Group. So you have two different catering companies, a bartending service, a physical venue. How did all of those other businesses come about, including the physical venue, which seems very different types of business model?
Yeah, I had a peer who had a catering company, and we'd been talking for even a couple of years before this happened about what's next for our industry. This industry, it's event centric, is it's a multi-billion-dollar thing that people think's just birthday parties and stuff, but it's a lot more than that. So it's also really cyclical. So these ups and downs for people that are owners, at least in it, and also employees see this too. Januaries and Februarys are rough. Like there's not a lot of business, and you start building overhead. So the whole goal of partnering up was trying to create something that was resilient. And then the idea started to become like, how do you make something that's pandemic proof? How do you make something that's feasible in different political climates? So we have all these brands that work underneath our umbrella. The umbrella is called Always Fishing, which is a bit of a, kind of like tongue-in-cheek statement. We've got Culinary, which is this high engagement designed for like luxe catering companies. You come to us and we'll do the full design of your event, food, beverage, your venue, location, the theme, the feel, all that stuff. Nettle and Match goes in office. It's an offering that's very approachable for not only an event that scales, but for that couple that's getting married on the coast that maybe has spent too much of their budget on, other parts of the wedding that have high importance, but they want incredible service and food. The venue in Oakland is called the Alice Collective. That is a place for people to gather and reconnect in the physical world. It's a rotating art gallery so people can show their work. It's a place for people to have corporate meetings or to have baby and bar mitzvah parties. And then we have our bar program, which sort of works across all of those platforms to provide service, but it also can go out and work inside other companies directly with clients and has licensing and for us to be able to sell retail and online. So we've built something now that supports all of our salaried employees and all of our hourly, where there's always something that can be done. There's some facet of work available for them. And although we're not there fully yet in the development of all these, the goal is strong. And so it's neurotic, but it's like the right type, I think.
And did you look at other businesses out there, culinary based businesses that added different features like you have in order to make it more resilient? Or is this kind of like what you figured out yourself?
No, I did. I looked all over, and we're still looking at additional things, franchise models and, other stuff to model out of our businesses. During that, time where everybody was pushing through 2020 and going into 21, I mean, I was also I opened myself up completely. It was very strange. And my family said, just let it all go. And I said, well, how much? And they said, let it all. And so I did. I kind of like shut it all down and then just open everything back up to see what would come. So I had tons of job offers. I was applying just to see what, I could be applicable towards. Just didn't really understand what my skill set was complete at that point. And all this stuff started coming out. There's just like all these opportunities. It was just sort of magic. And a lot of really cool stuff, that I could have done and different things and different industries and all that stuff. And I just sort of got in this mindset that I wanted to be part of the beginning of it. I wanted to have ownership and power in the new relationship. So being an employee wasn't going to work. I also wanted to be empowered to make decisions quick and have quality of life and all this stuff. And so, I mean, what we're doing now, that it checked all those boxes. And so I went there, checked my boxes. Maybe not the smartest things, but for what I need, that's what I was going for.
There were other business owners that had kind of a similar experience to what you described, where during the pandemic, their business just kind of shut down and they had very little to do during that period of time. How long a time are we talking about here? And what did you do during that time to avoid becoming like woefully depressed and to, I don't know, make the most of that time in order to figure out what your next move was?
Yeah. I mean, that was it. We were essential workers, so we didn't have to stop, which means we actually started working way more and harder. And so then I got to a point where the family was going like, wow, like,
Yeah, where are you?
everybody else is like going to Montana and doing deer ranches and, renting RVs and driving over the country. And we were not doing that. I was not doing it. So when I stopped everything, which was like such a bizarre experience to shut something so big down and package it up and put it into shipping container type stuff and step away. I mean, the first thing I did, this might sound weird or whatever. I went on like solo backpacking trip. I found this like incredibly remote location and I just disappeared.
How long?
Everybody around me said, you need this.
How long did you go for?
I was only out for 3 nights by myself, but it was like perfectly tied to like torrential rain and like perfect baking day and, hot temperatures, and found these hot, soaking tubs, and it was great. And so when I came back, I was like still completely lost. I was like, this is such a massive decision and I don't have to go to work tomorrow and I don't have to do this. And so I like quickly got right back into it. So I actually bought like, 3 different duplexes in Arizona. And now we have a 4th. I started sitting with my kids again. Great. Just with zero distraction, no phone distraction stuff. And I probably went through that for like 5 months or so and then got real antsy and then started just getting him that I think it's an entrepreneurial thing. When you don't have anything to do, you're like, oh man, there's all these like hidden pockets of time that I should be doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So just re-engaged. And then, by the end of 21 was sort of back in front of all this, different intent. I have different barriers up, but it wasn't multi-year. That's for sure.
Sounds like it was a great opportunity for you to kind of do some deep reflection, deep thinking about what you want to do with the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And 100%. One of the things that I think emerged from it, I don't know if this was from before, but you've gotten into more coaching and helping actually some junior and senior high school kids and also college kids. And this is beyond just culinary, but tell us about that.
Yeah. The coaching stuff from a business owner to a business owner happened really quick. I was lucky to get on Inc. 5000, within a few years of my first business, and have been on it now 4 times. So business owners approach me all the time. Hey, how do we increase sales? How do we create, this connectivity between our team? How do you apply creativity and how can we do that? And it was always this thing where I was sitting in my industry with other business owners, and I'm fault to this too. You take coaching until the end of your coaching session, and then you might just revert back to your original way if there's not somebody there, because we're all a little baked at this point. We've kind of like set ourselves in the direction we're going to go, and like, pandemic or not, like I'm probably just going to keep going this way. So what I was thinking a lot during this whole period was like, what's the driver? What's the decisions? How did I get here? Kind of like what you're asking, like what was this stuff, and how would we help somebody with the next? And was really and still very interested with like college debt and declaring a major but not using the major and all that stuff. And so I started coaching late teens and early 20s on their whys, because up until that point, the why, usually it's curated by somebody else. But when you step out on your own, that why either needs to be believed and you should be good to move forward with it, or before you really get there, you should start asking, like, what is this? Why am I taking these courses? What's this major going to do? What does this really mean if I step out with debt? How do I get rid of it quickly? How do I build something? Do I want to build something? Do I want it from somebody else? And I don't have the answers, but somebody I think needs to be there to ask the questions for these kids. And so that's what I'm doing. And I got all this stuff going on, but that like passion of sitting with somebody and seeing like goal set and get out of it and like actually get something that they can own. It's incredible.
That's great. Yeah, it can be so rewarding to have an impact on a young person's lives like that. I believe that is Field Guide Consulting is the name of that business. So, John, this has been great. Really enjoyed hearing your background and your story. Where can people go to learn more about Culinary Catering and Always Fishing Hospitality Group and connect with you?
You can go to alwaysfishinghg.com. That's alwaysfishinghg.com. You'll see all our brands there. You can read a little bit too about why. And then the other side is Field Guide Consulting. And that one again is it's the coaching platform. It's for everybody, but right now I'm definitely kind of geeking out on watching this transition into adulthood.
Yeah.
It's refreshing.
Cool. John, thanks so much.
Yeah, great connecting. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.